talking about in the chapter.
So like from what I read was that they were comparing like Canada to I believe the US, because Canada they have like here in the US our minimum wage is set by the federal government, and in Canada I guess it's like what we would consider like states, and their states each regulate it, but they were trying to find, they had like case studies, and they were trying to find like the effects of minimum wage on things like the job market, and because some people were saying that it had negative effects, some people were saying that it had positive effects, and what they basically overall found was that there was no like in some places there was a correlation, but in some places there wasn't. It was very dependent on other variables like within the areas of study.
What else that I learned while I was reading was that usually due to the minimum wage, you're less advantaged youth, or your which are usually minorities, have a less advantage of becoming able to sustain a job and make income.
And did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I'd say it's about the debate between whether higher minimum wage does more damage than good to the economy and to minorities within the economy.
Anybody else with like kind of summary? So like, what would be some of the advantages of raising minimum wage and versus like the disadvantages, the cost and benefit?
An advantage would be people because there is a set like level of income that they have to pay you. People can at least get by. They may not be able to. They might just get by, but they'll be able to get by.
One of the other things is that one group that they were looking at is the teenagers, and they saw that like teenagers were a lot of times like leaving minimum wage jobs to like go back to school. So if you increase the minimum wage, like you might see a drop in that kind of.
So like less people, more people would just work minimum wage instead of going.
Yeah.
As if you raise the minimum wage, I'm not sure if that'll affect people going to school, because if they do raise it, like in some states they have, they're not raising it by much. So you're not gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna go to school because they gave me $1 more per hour. That doesn't even amount to anything. So I don't know if that will be completely true.
Some businesses couldn't afford to raise, so they would have to let some people go to compensate for having to pay a higher wage. So some people might lose their jobs.
I read that when you raise the minimum wage, firms would be less willing to train workers lacking basic skills because it would cost more.
So another hand thought. Oh,
I was thinking that it'd be, there'd be an increase in the product price, so whatever you're selling. If you're not laying off workers, then they're gonna increase the price of that.
They talked about more discrimination. It doesn't cost as much to, or the cost of discrimination goes away when the minimum wage is higher.
So, that'd be a,
It'd be a cost, yeah.
They were talking about how people would be losing their jobs. That means like less teenagers would get jobs because they have less skills, and that'll give teenagers more time to like get in trouble and like not make the right decisions. Because if they have a job, they have something to work for and have like goals, and if they don't, they're more likely to get in trouble.
Another benefit kind of goes along with better living, but if you do raise the price or the price of minimum wage, a lot of those people that are working in the gas stations or your clerks or whatever that are barely making it or are even under the poverty line, it increases not only their salary, their family salary, so I guess that would be better living, but it also would decrease the amount of poverty, I guess, under the poverty line.
Another benefit would be employers can exploit their workers by paying them way too little for what they're worth. So
how would you phrase that?
decreased exploitation. I don't know if that's a good way to put it.
So are you saying like when people take advantage or like if they're not getting what they want, they kind of, I don't know what you're saying here.
Well, so like, people who, they aren't able to argue for higher wages, but they do deserve higher wages, but the company is just saying, well, take this wage or get out, I guess. They talked about it, I don't know where they talked about it. I read it somewhere.
It said that when the minimum wage was increased, that the businesses that were less generous with fringe benefits, so the workers wouldn't get as many benefits if they got an increase in minimum wage. Anyone else?
A benefit would be that people would be more satisfied with their jobs if they're getting a wage they felt like they deserved.
Another benefit, excuse me, you could also find that people are more loyal to the jobs, like that pay, like if the minimum wage is higher, then they don't always have to go out and find another job that's paying as well or better.
Did anybody work a job in high school or currently? Do you think you got paid enough for what you did? Like, question for me, did anybody work in a restaurant? Do you think waitresses should get full minimum wage plus tips, or should they stay at $2.14 an hour? Because
Minimum wage should definitely be there for waitresses, because I've had some people like literally basically throw their drinks at me, and like no one deserves that for $2.14 an hour.
that was just something I was curious about.
But then again, that's where like I think it's better if like it's a federally like mandated minimum wage. Because like I'm from Connecticut and the minimum wage is like $9, I think. So, but then like here it's lower. So like I think that's where like federally mandating minimum wage would be better.
as far as the waitress thing goes, when you like you get paid a certain amount an hour, and then you have your tips, and most of the time, well, I mean, I guess it depends on the restaurant and the waitress, and a combination of factors, you're getting paid more than minimum wage anyway. But if you're not, say you didn't make enough tips, and as far as the amount of hours that you worked, you weren't at minimum wage, isn't your employer supposed to pay you the difference anyway? So wouldn't you still be?
Some places do that. Some
Yeah.
places you have to like split tips between everybody.
That's what I was gonna say. Like at my restaurant, it didn't matter if one girl didn't do anything. We all had to split the tips, so it doesn't really equal out to minimum wage.
Adding on to what she said earlier about it being mandated, the only problem with that is the cost of living in every state is different. Like if you go to New York and try to live on the minimum wages down here, up there, you take a break, you ain't gonna do it. The cost of living up there is
That's true.
outrageous.
But like, I don't mean like federally mandate, like a blanket statement. Like, obviously you wouldn't have $9 an hour down here because the cost of living isn't conducive to a $9 an hour minimum wage. But I definitely don't think it should be $2.14. So I'm just saying, like, but the thing is, you could have a minimum wage in this county and then a minimum wage in this county. So I'm thinking, like, statewide, just have the same thing. Statewide have the same thing.
Oh, I get you now.
Another cost that they talked about, and I've experienced, they said in Canada there's fewer small businesses because small businesses can't afford to pay the minimum wage. So not only do bigger businesses they can't afford as many workers, but small businesses, they just go out of business and they don't no longer exist in the long run.
In some other countries, there's no tipping, there's no tips. And like in China, we don't have tips. There's no sector that receive tips. If you receive tip, that's considered as a bribe, And so we do have a salary for the waitress, for the bell person, and so then the question is, if we're talking about whether it is fair to have this $2.50 per hour for waitress, then you got to ask a question. What is their actual annual salary? What is the average actual salary for waitress or waiter? Right? And then we take a look at that figure and we determine whether that is above or below the minimum wage.
And a lot of that will depend on like what restaurant you're working at.
In which area you work at, yes.
Yeah.
If we take the national average, do you guys know what is it? National average.
20,880.
You got it?
Yeah.
So that is above. Is that above the minimum wage? I think so. It is above.
Because the national average of minimum wage is about 15,000.
Yeah.
The salary.
I feel like minimum wage could, minimum wage could also depend on what job you work. Cause this summer or 2 summers ago I was a camp counselor and we got paid minimum wage, and it was 9 to 5 dealing with kids all day outside. I feel like camp counselors should get paid more than that. And this summer I worked just making videos and I got paid $14.50 an hour and I got to sit inside on a computer. So it just I feel like it should depend on the job and what minimum wage is.
And going back to what they mentioned about should it be regulated federally or state, local level? What do y'all think about that? What do you think would be more beneficial?
I would say I wouldn't say federal, just because if the federal government's mandating it, the New York kind of the North Carolina comparison, it's different. But your local governments, I'm from Florida, and so I'm actually from Tallahassee, and the difference between Tallahassee and Pembroke are very, very significant. And so the people, and it's $8.55 in Tallahassee. And I say that because if you do it by states, okay, you have multiple economic discrepancies in that state. So you have Pembroke, but you also have Charlotte in North Carolina. So then you're like, okay, maybe state's not the best way either, because how can the state mandate something for everyone when economic statuses are way different wherever you go? So that's when you say, okay, you look at local and you're like, well, there's perks to it because, okay, this is where we are as a local economy, and we need to build or we need to decrease minimum wage. So I think local government is probably your better idea, just because of the differences in economic markets everywhere you go.
I would kind of disagree with that. I agree that we shouldn't do like a national thing, because even like state by state, like New England is way more expensive than it is down here in California. Like it's just like all over the place. So I would agree that national level is not the best way to go, but I feel like local level, it gets too like, well, over here it's just like a little bit more expensive to live over here, so we're gonna anyway. But I just feel like the state level, I feel like that would be, it would at least give it some kind of uniformity, like all over this one area, and not just like everywhere all over the map.
I guess it makes sense to do the local thing because different economies and stuff. I don't know how practical it is, but either way, when you're talking about minimum wage, if you do decide to raise it, where's this money coming from? Like she said, with this whole summer camp thing, you get paid $7.25. So, or did you say $7.25? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you want to raise that, where does that money come from? Are you charging the parents more now? But now, can more parents afford it? Like, so I don't know. I don't think you can ever really get it to be where it's at a balance and where everything makes sense.
I think that I kind of think it's like good how it is, except for the waitress thing. I don't think that's right, but I think that like each state should have like a set price or whatever, but then each business has its choice of like what is going to pay the employees, as long as it doesn't go below the minimum wage. You know what I mean? Like how it is now, like how you said with the summer camp, how you got paid like $7.25, and then you went and took pictures, it was like 14 something. So like, long as they didn't go below the minimum wage in the state, then I kind of feel like then it's kind of up to the employee. Do they want to get paid that?
I agree with what she said about the local, because I live in Brunswick County, which is like major beach town, but you also have one part of the town that's like complete solid country. So at the beach, you're gonna get like $900 a month in rent, but you drive 20 minutes down the road and you get $650 a month for rent. So the pay there couldn't be like based on local, because one half of the city is way cheaper and one half is way more expensive. So I agree with her about how like little locals would probably be too much. So it should be more of a state thing.
Yeah, and if you go off local, then it would kind of like, everyone envisions it as everyone being equal, but that's not how it is. You have your high class, your low class, and then a majority of the people in your middle class section. So if you have everyone equally, then it doesn't work.
But you have that in the state, and then you'd be putting the state, everybody in the state equal, and we're just not there. Like you take Raleigh, Charlotte, and then you look at Pembroke, you look at this county, and we're nowhere near them. So, I mean, it's like the same thing.
And I also think like if you are gonna put a local government in charge of this, of making the minimum wage, the local government, making this needs to realize that there's different part of like a big city, or like you said, you're from Brunswick, right? Mm-hmm. And so like there's different parts of that city. And now then you're like, okay, is there a line or whatever? But there should definitely be not just, okay, everyone in Pembroke, North Carolina is gonna make this much. of course, it's all about minimum wage, as in you can't dip under. So it's not like, okay, it's $7.50, so everyone's gonna get paid $7.50, because that's not what minimum wage is. But you would also have to, I guess, take into account where people live, where the money's coming from, where the money needs to be, who needs the money, before you determine your minimum wage. I guess if that makes sense.
Like that makes sense, but like we've said, the smaller businesses aren't gonna last. And like here in Pembroke, all we have is small businesses. So if you raise the minimum wage, they're not gonna be able to pay their employees. So it's gonna be hard to make that actually happen.
Yeah. So pretty much as y'all have been debating, you see how there's two sides of it, and you can never choose one and have like a balance of the other, like she was talking about. And there was a quote at the end of the chapter from a high-level labor official, and he says, "When it comes to the minimum wage, there are no easy positions to take. Either you are in favor of more jobs, less discrimination, and more on-the-job training, or you support better wages for workers. Whatever stance you choose, you are bound to get clobbered by the opposition." Do you agree with that quote?
Which one do you favor?
Yeah. I'll take a vote.
I think that's why you can't stay in a minimum wage job. Like, not knocking anybody, but I don't think it would be a wise choice to say be a waitress all your life, or be somebody that works in the fast food all your life. Unless, I mean, you can move up, because you can, but I'm just saying, if you're stuck at minimum wage all your life, I don't think that would be a good decision. That's why you have to try to do other things, and then if you don't, then...
But sometimes that's just the reality for some people. I mean, some people haven't had the same opportunities as others, so some people they just can't get out of it, because I mean, like, my grandma definitely was like a waitress all her life because she didn't have education, she didn't have the money for it, so there was no way for her to go up, whereas me, I'm getting education, so I don't have to be minimum wage. So I think we just need to realize that some people just really can't get out of that, like, it's just their reality.
Didn't they just raise the minimum wage in New York? Thought I heard something about that.
Didn't they do 10?
I believe they did. I think Era was at least up for debate to raise it up to $11 an hour.
Um, 15?
No, that's
Oh, that's what I want.
but do you think, what would be more beneficial? Would it be raising the minimum wage, or raising minimum wage and there being less jobs, or having more jobs but more on the site training and stuff like that, but you'd still get paid less?
Probably more on the site training and like more jobs available, because if there's less jobs, we already don't have enough jobs. So if there's less jobs, then more people would be living on the streets and like in homeless shelters and stuff, and that would be worse than being paid just a little bit.
And if there's more jobs, you hear about these single moms working 3 jobs, and that's how they get by. And as terrible as that sounds, like, that's how they're making a life for their kids. So by having the more jobs, less money, at least there's an opportunity for people to get the jobs. While if there is no jobs there, the increase in population is still rising in America, and that leaves a lot of people stranded, whether you're very intelligent or not, don't have much education.
And also adding to that thought, if you have a bunch of people out there that are Joe Blows off the street, don't know what they're doing, even if like they get paid more, they still don't know what they're doing. And if they cut back the on-the-job training in order to be able to pay them more, I personally don't know about you, but it's when it comes to like carpentry and like falling trees and forestry and everything, I personally don't want some Joe off the street that doesn't know how to fell a tree without knocking over a power line or crashing it into somebody's house. that's just the first thing that came to my head as far as an example goes.
I have a question. So like jobs that require like on the job training, like I thought they got paid more than minimum wage anyway. Like the minimum wage jobs are like you didn't really need like on the job training, but it's like a restaurant, you know, you punch in the like I mean I thought it was
Yeah, like I work in a restaurant and they still had there's like 3 days of computer training, and then there's like a few days where I had to follow another waitress around and learn how to do everything.
right, but is that really on the job training?
Yeah, it is.
You still have to pay somebody to train another person.
And like
You don't
see
want-
Oh, I didn't know they got
trainings
paid for that. I thought they
Yeah,
got
like-
there and then
When if as a waitress, at least at my restaurant, if you're training somebody, you're making minimum wage plus tips because you still have to put up with all their ignorance, not knowing anything yet.
oh well, at my job we didn't get paid for training. You just followed somebody, and that was that. Yeah. So, that's all I just.
It's kind of like going to what she said ish, but like a lot of minimum wage jobs do like involve training. Like you can't walk into McDonald's and expect to know exactly what to do. Like
Yeah.
it may sound weird. I was a sign spinner, like, and I had no clue what I was doing the first day I did that. So someone had to teach me how to do that, and I still made minimum.
I know what you mean. Like obviously they would have to, but when I hear on the job training, it's like, let's go learn how to cut a tree, or let's go learn how to sort these pills how they need to be, or let's go
I think she's just more serious.
Yeah, like
on
more
job
like
training.
on the job training. I don't know.
Wouldn't that be more like going to college? Like as you were saying, pills, like that would be pharmaceutical.
You can do on the job
Training,
for
like
that.
CVS trains pharmacy techs in the store. Like you don't have to have any education to
At
go
all.
do that. So
I saw something on Facebook the other day, and a couple people shared, and it was about, it was like entry-level job advertisement, and then it said you need like 10 years experience and 2 college degrees for this entry-level job, and I think that's what it was talking about, like, people don't want to hire, they want, it's an entry-level position, but because they can't afford to pay someone who's inexperienced that high minimum wage, then they say, well, it's entry level, but you still need all this experience before you come to us. So I think that's what they're talking about on the job training. They want experienced people.
I think a more experienced person, they would make like a better worker in the sense of you're not having to train them everything. And I feel like whether you raise the minimum wage or not, or whatever payment that you're talking about, if you're an employer, I feel like you're going to want that more experienced person anyway, just because they're the better choice. So I don't think minimum wage has anything to do with that. Like I think you want somebody better, and they're better.
Yeah, but if you have someone who's not experienced, if you pay them less, then there's an incentive. You say, oh well, I'll hire you and train you because I only have to pay you this little amount. But if I have to pay you this high amount and train you, I'm probably not going to hire you. I think that's where the
But
minimum
why
wage
would you
comes in.
train them if they already had the experience? Like, what are you training them? Like, what are you?
I mean, you do have to have orientation and some training, but I'm talking about like someone who's never done the job before, has no experience, no job experience, no education about it.
But when you do that, wouldn't you just say the person that doesn't have experience and stuff? Wouldn't you think that it would take them longer to get whatever you want them to get? So even though you're spending less, I guess, per hour, you're still having to like use more money to train them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
you still don't want inexperienced people, but you really don't want them if you have to pay them a lot, I guess.
Alright, well, I would agree with that.
And like you have to get experience somewhere. So
Yeah.
at some point you're going to be the unexperienced person trying to learn how to do a job, and
Yeah, I
like,
think
you may not have as many opportunities to do that if the minimum wage was higher.
Yeah, I think that's what she's getting at. I think basically, if you don't have any experience at all, and when they raise the minimum wage prices, that's just gonna be that much more incentive for them not to hire you, because you already don't know what you're doing, so they're already about it anyway. But if they raise the cost and they have to pay you more, that's just that much more incentive not to, and to go hire this person over here that does have experience.
That's what the book talk about, discrimination come into play.
Sometimes
You know, they discriminate against the people who are less experienced, who have no expertise. They prefer somebody who have expertise. That's what they talk about, discrimination.
I agree with her, and you like how like so everyone has to start at the bottom. But sometimes like restaurants, their only option is someone to pick that doesn't have any experience. So like they're gonna have to do training anyway. So it depends on whether the minimum wage is high or not. You might only be able to pick someone with no experience, and they'll have to be trained no matter what.
So, kind of not really switching gears, but on this note is, I'm looking at our note tonight to see like, we're talking about how minimum wage is low. And you know, helping those who do a good job or are experienced by boosting their salary compared to those that, you know, you're gonna have to train and all this and pour resources into. But that's kind of what an incentive is, you know, like you want your workers to be good workers. You want them to, you know, if you're in a restaurant, you want them to be a people's person. You want them to get good remarks and all this stuff. So that's when you give the incentive. Okay, you know, if you're being productive, you're making more money. Even though, you know, the mark for minimum wage is still there. So whether, you know, they raise it or not, incentives, money, the economic incentive is always going to be, you know, if you work harder, you'll get a raise or you'll get more benefits. So I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with anybody, more than I'm just saying that, like, with the experienced and unexperienced workers, like, we live in a country that says equal opportunity for all. And so, you know, if you want to hire the person with experience, but if you hire them both and you've got the incentives in place, I think that that you can keep the minimum wage the same with more jobs, and you have more incentive money, you have more benefits to give. So then the competition within the company is also there. If that makes sense, right?
I think I'm following.
Okay.
But then, so like Dr. She was saying that like that forces like discrimination against people who aren't qualified, but I feel like that can go like the same way. Like if you raise minimum wage, like some companies, like say you have like the farming industry and there's a minimum wage set saying that you have to pay people a higher amount. They're gonna discriminate against people who would want that higher amount. So then that forces discrimination against qualified people. And then you find the companies going towards like nationalized citizens or immigrants and like stuff like that. So that forces discrimination against higher qualified people, and then you're, I don't know, in a sense, manipulating a lower sector.
Seeing both sides of the argument, I want to do the vote thing. So, who all is for raising the minimum wage with the cost and benefits?
Well, I guess that takes care of that.
Yeah, I'm kinda that on the line, because there's good reasons to do it and there's good reasons not to do it. I can't really decide either way if I'm for or against it, so I'm kinda on the line.
I personally I don't understand why there is a comparison between if we raise minimum wage, you can't have training. I don't know, I just don't understand it. I just don't get it.
It doesn't make
it doesn't make
sense.
sense.
Anybody help you explain that?
They're gonna want to hire somebody who's ready to work right then.
You still have to train them on your system, what you were doing. You still have to let them go through orientation.
And what jobs are we talking about? Because you're talking about all these skills and stuff that we have to have, but just say you go apply. Because when I think of minimum wage, I think about fast food restaurants. I don't think about careers people have.
Yeah, you have to have training for that beforehand anyway.
Exactly. So when you say you apply to somewhere for McDonald's or whatever, they're not gonna be like, okay, well, she's never been a cashier before, or she doesn't have these skills, we're not gonna hire her. You're probably gonna get hired at McDonald's, and that is your experience. That is your job experience that you list on your resumes or whatever. No matter what job you're trying to get, or like when you're trying to get into school and you're listing things on your activities resume, whatever. And then you learn skills from that job, like how to be friendly to people. What else do you learn? I'm a cashier. I should.
Patience.
Yes.
Lots of
There's
patience.
a lot of things that you learn from that, but I don't feel like people like McDonald's and other fast food places are gonna be like, you don't have skills, we're not hiring you, because all
If
they
anything,
have
they'll be
working
like,
in
you're
there
too
is
qualified.
anyway.
There's some
Exactly.
jobs that say like, oh, you have too much experience or too much, like, credentials. So, like, I don't know. I just don't understand. Like, if I went to apply to McDonald's and like, or I guess whatever, a restaurant, and they were like, okay, yeah, you can work here. They're not just, even if they did raise minimum wage, they're not just gonna be like, there you go. Like, they have to show me like their specific system. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is like no matter what, there's gonna be a training
Yeah.
in
I
place.
worked at, my boss literally, after she hired me, she hired me.
Anybody want to use the supply and the demand concept to put this in this, and explain that?
Well, I don't know how to put it in supply and demand, but I have an example. When I was in high school, I was a nanny, and when I first started nannying, I made $5 an hour, and because I didn't have any experience, and they liked me, but I wasn't I couldn't potty train, I wasn't as good with small babies, and so I made $5 an hour nannying. And then as I gained more experience over the years, I raised my rate to $8 because I had more experience, and I had additional qualities and skills. And so say there was this law that said every nanny has to make $8 an hour, which is the minimum wage law. If I came to interview for a job and they said, well, what skills do you have? And I said, well, I've never nannied before. They're not gonna wanna pay me $8 an hour. $8 is what a skilled nanny is worth. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
Right, but I'm
Yes.
saying like, I mean, first of all, I'm not gonna take care of anybody's kids for $5.
It was miserable. Okay.
I'm not gonna do that. Like, no. But I'm saying like if say you were a nanny, like with a nanny, like what are they called? Like
a nanny company.
like a
that's
nanny
regulated.
company,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
like what's that show? Nanny 911.
Yeah.
Okay. And like they call there, they're like, I need a nanny, send somebody. They send you. It doesn't matter if you're like that experienced or not. They still have to
But I
do
have
minimum wage.
I have lost jobs though because I charged too much and didn't have the skills. So they wanted more skilled person. I
That's
guess.
their fault. They should have asked.
Well, like, nannying isn't usually through a company. Like, a lot of times it's just off the market, so you can get paid whatever you want,
Yeah,
whatever
and
they
so-
want to pay you. So, like, it's just like, it's not the same as a minimum wage.
Well, that's the reason.
But if it
you're-
was, that's why I said, say, if there was a law that said I had to make $8 an hour.
Okay, okay.
So, I know it doesn't. It's not real, but.
Okay, I think when you work kind of like under the table, if that makes sense, then they can pay you $5. They can pay you $2. They can pay you $0.25. But you knew that when you did it. So I don't know how this pertains to minimum wage, but unless you're like at a nanny company or like a babysitter with a daycare or something. But as far as the skills thing goes and paying you more, it's just the way it is, and maybe you shouldn't go into something that requires the skills. Now, how you would obtain those skills, if you don't ever do it, makes sense too. But then I guess you just have to start out at a lower rate than, say, a skilled person. Because that's just...
But if the lower rate is against the law, that's what I'm saying. Because the minimum wage requirement is $8.
Right.
there's a law that says you cannot pay someone less than $8.
Right. Then I feel like they would pay you 8 and just say somebody that had experience and was skilled, okay, that's where you start seeing the $9, $10, $11.
So, but then the cost goes up, and that's where they're saying where companies can't pay as many employees because they're paying these employees more. They can't afford. There's less jobs,
Right.
basically.
So then maybe everybody just needs to get paid $8. Like, I don't know where this money would come from either.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know whether we should raise it or not, because where does it come from?
Well, with like the nannying example, if you take your kid to a daycare, the rates are through the roof. And those people are not qualified to take care of that many youngins at one time.
And I promise you, most of them are not gonna be potty trained.
No, and so like my mom doesn't do that because she's against it. I have a 4-year-old little brother. She pays a lady $60 a day to like help my brother learn, help him potty train. I mean, stuff that he could not get from the people at the daycare. And that's a little bit over minimum wage. But the people at the daycare probably make like $10, $11 an hour and totally have no training in like watching a little baby for 8 hours a day. I mean, it's just, I kind of agree with what you were saying about like pay more, but then I don't because like a daycare company pays people who can't take care of that many kids way higher than a normal person who nannies does.
So, the demand curve, for if you do end up raising, the minimum wage is going to go to the left. That's right. Yeah.
That is right. So
Because-
before you answer that, so what market we are talking about right now? What market we're talking about?
Pay.
I mean, the person that's paying,
What kind of, when we
Like
say
restaurants
market,
or
there must be
job
a
market?
good or service that is provided in this market. So right now, you've been discussing what market?
Babysitting
Babysitting.
services.
Labor market.
labor.
Labor market. And we're talking about labor supply and labor demand.
Mhm.
And Blaine just said the labor demand is going to decrease.
Right.
It's going to shift to the left.
Because the price is going,
Because it's more costly.
Right.
For the, you may, let's say someday I don't have a kid right now. Someday I have a kid, I need to hire a nanny, okay? I have a budget, okay, $50 per day, that's my budget. Okay, if it's $5, I'm probably gonna hire this person for 10 hours. But if it's $8, I'm gonna cut some hours. I'm going to like find my own time to take care of the baby myself. So the hours are going to be decreased because it's more costly. So trust me, the companies and the labor demanders, they're going to take that cost into their consideration. And they will not make themselves lose. Okay, so you have to do that, they decrease the employment, and they may decrease the product as well. But definitely they will take that into consideration. Yeah. So the demand, go ahead. Lane, you gonna continue?
Oh, you want me to finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't know if you
Then no one would eat there.
But the supply would shift to the right. Cause there would be more, if the minimum wage is increased, there'd be less workers, but they'd be being paid more.
Okay, so we keep this graph there. I'm going to actually talk more about this graph later.
So the
Okay,
bottom
yeah.
of the graph is the price that said person is being paid.
Actually, why don't I start here right now?
That's, because that's what I'm confused about.
Okay. So you guys have written down this? It's pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to erase this and talk to you about what is the theory behind minimum wage. Okay, and the theory actually is extreme simple. Okay. But first, I'm going to tell you a concept here. Okay. The concept is what I'm going to tell you is the government intervening the market. Okay. And before we talk about, supply and demand, okay? If we leave the market alone, it does not matter what market we're talking about. Okay? If we leave the market alone, And market is going to establish what we call the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, okay? So this is under assumption that there is no third party intervening in this market. There is no manipulation of the market, okay? But sometimes the policymaker or the government is not too happy with the outcome of the market. For example, gas price is going down right now. But I think a few years ago it was close to $4 at a certain point. Let's say if someday it went up to, it goes up to $5 per gallon. I mean, nobody's going to be happy about it, okay? So when the market outcome is not too satisfied, either by the consumer or by the government, and that's the time when the government wants to step in, okay? However, we talk about opportunity cost, right? And there's a cost for everything, okay? So how does the government intervene? There's two different kind of policies that government can use in order to intervene in the market. The first one we call the direct policy. Direct policy is a policy that direct target the market price, okay? And the first one we call the price ceiling. What is price ceiling? Price ceiling is a policy when the government thinks the market equilibrium price is too high. The example I just gave to you. If gas price goes up to $5 per gallon, the government probably want to put a cap on it. Okay, so that's when the government is going to use price ceiling policy. Okay, so let me ask you this right now. If the price ceiling policy is implemented, it's going to be below or above the equilibrium price? It's going to be below. Don't be misled by this ceiling word, okay? It's going to be below. Why? Because the government thinks the market equilibrium price is too high, and they put price ceiling on, put a cap on it. Okay? Okay, so now let's take a look at it. If the price is set as right here, what is the direct consequence of that?
The price goes down.
Okay, before your eyes right here, right? When you right here, your quantity demanded is exactly quantity supplied, which means that everybody who wants to sell the good can find somebody who will buy it. And everybody who wants to buy it is able to find the product in the market. Okay, so we call that condition is market is clear. Everybody is happy. We call that it's temporarily stable situation. That's why we call the market equilibrium. Equilibrium means stable. It's temporarily stable because everyone is happy with that outcome. But now price ceiling is implemented. Look at this line here. Now the price is right here. So what is quantity demanded now? This is the demand, right? This is demand, and this is the price, and that where they meet, right? So now quantity demand is right here. So when the government put a cap on the price, you have more people demand goods than the people who want to supply. Now the supply is right here. You guys see that? Okay? And then we have this discrepancy between the quantity supplied and quantity demanded. What is it called? Quantity demanded is bigger than quantity supplied.
Imbalance.
So we have a shortage there. You have shortage there. And whenever there's a shortage in market, what may arise? There's a shortage.
Inflation? Like, is that what inflation happens?
Black market. Right? Black market might rise. And people who sell in the black market, they charge a higher price. Okay? So that's a direct consequence of price ceiling. Okay? So that's the cost of this policy. But does not mean that this policy is not good. No. Yeah, it has its good intention. It has good intention, but it has cost. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Everything has its own cost, no matter whether the intention was good or not. Okay? So that's the first direct policies. And the second one is what we talk about in this chapter. We call it the price floor. Price floor is, the policy price floor is implemented when the government thinks the market equilibrium price is too low. So it is going to be above
going to be above. Okay? Now let me ask you this. If the price is above the equilibrium price, now what happened here?
It's a surplus.
We have a surplus. Now the quantity supplied is right here and quantity demanded right here. There's more units that's been provided in the market than the number of people who want it. So if we're talking about the labor market, like this in this chapter, tell me what does this surplus translate to? If there's a surplus in the labor market, what does that mean?
Lower prices.
Surplus in the labor market.
There's too many workers and not enough jobs.
What is that called?
Unemployment.
Unemployment.
So this is the number of unemployment. So this is a direct consequence of price floor. Okay, so now we're talking about raising the minimum wage. When you raise the minimum wage, see what happens here. The gap is
Increased.
the bigger.
It increases.
So that what theory predicts. So when you raise the minimum wage, the quantity demanded, just like what Blaine said, is going to decrease. There are less firms, or the firm, desire less number of hours from their workers. But there will be more people who are willing to work. But this will create a bigger unemployment. Okay, so that's a direct consequence of that. And again, does it mean this policy is very bad? No. Here we only talk from the angle of economics. Remember, this is only economics, but there's many other aspects that relate to this. Social issues. When you raise minimum wage, people who are working at minimum wage level, they are happier. Actually, a lot of them, they are happier. So there's some, there's some social incentive in place when you raise the minimum wage. But the cost is this. That's the cost. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you guys.
I think this would be a good point to go to the discussion questions before we run out of time. And since we only have 15 minutes, there are just a few of them that really stuck out to me. One I really like is the second question. Are there any methods other than higher minimum wage that could raise the incomes of low-wage workers without reducing unemployment among minority youngsters? Any ideas for that?
Lowering the price of living.
Can you repeat the question?
Is there another way to increase the income for people trying to earn money for families in poverty or something like that, but not reducing employment in teenagers? I thought this was a really hard question. I had a hard time answering this one.
You could make it seasonal. Because I know, at least where I'm from, a lot of teenagers tended not to work so much during the school year as they did during the summer. So, maybe, I don't know, increase wages during the school year. I don't know, it might be a little crazy, but that's just the only thing I can think of.
Do you think there is a way that we could, I don't know how to phrase this, help the families living in poverty, having parents that have to work minimum wage, but have everybody keep their job?
I wanted to say, have the minimum wage, geared to how many people you're supporting, so people with families would have a higher minimum wage, and then teenagers would have a lower minimum wage, because their cost of living is really low. But then you have discrimination against people with families.
So that would not be fair at all. That would be like me working without a family and then you working because you have a family. I mean, I know you got more people to support, so you need the money more than I do, but that's not to say that I don't want to do things. You choose to have a family, nobody tells you to.
And this is the minimum wage, you can still earn more.
I know, but I don't know how you would, if you say that minimum wage, if you raise it, affects like employment and stuff, I don't know how you would not cut the teenagers.
Yeah.
If you do have to cut somebody, or you do want these people with families to live, that just goes back to the you can't stay at minimum wage, like you just can't.
And if they did the gearing thing, there's no way to tell if a mother who has 5 kids is spending her money on her 5 kids. Like,
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, that was my first thought.
yeah.
And then I was like, no, that's not good.
I mean, we do have government assistance too. Not that that fixes everything. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying that. I mean, people who probably are working minimum wage, like supporting a family doing it, they probably are like on some type of assistance too. So they're still getting more money than say that teenager is, or the person without the family, but you want to give more money to the family. So,
Do you think that, like, a single mom, like, let's say you have a single mom with no experience and a teenager with no experience willing to work the same hours and for the same price, how would you decide which one would get that job?
I would definitely give it to the single mom just because I feel like she's probably more mature and will probably do her job better than someone high schoolers have a lot of stuff going on and their mind isn't always on what it should be on. So.
No. If you, like a lot of times people, like employers, it's not a time for moral stuff like that. Like, I don't want to hear your violin play. Okay, now I'm not trying to sound like that. I'm just saying, like, you can't just be like, well, she has a baby, let me hire her. Well, this teenager might be trying to help out his or her single mom who's trying to make ends meet. So you can't just be like, you have a kid. Again, that goes back to the discrimination thing. It's not my fault you have a kid. I'm just saying.
You're gonna be a great businesswoman. You're gonna be a great businesswoman.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the people that need to run businesses because when you put too much emotion into it, that's when things start getting complicated. So she's gonna be a good manager.
I'm not even going into business. I just work minimum wage, so that's why I just feel.
Strong with
Yes.
Olivia.
I think that if you're an employer and you're in that position, you're not just like, you're looking at, work ethic and other stuff more than just like if you know nothing about, you're like, oh, I'm gonna give it to this person due to this social factor. You're looking it deeper, high schoolers have to give their grades to some of their, employers. Or, you got your background checks, all this other stuff. So it's not like if you're a job and you've got a single, and you're gonna be like, without looking, okay, I want that one. You've gotta, as an employer, if we follow the law and we're giving equal opportunity to everybody, then you're gonna see who's made it farther or whatever the call.
I think to add on to what she was saying, I think she was saying they both have the same qualifications. Everything is the exact same except one's a single mother, one's a teenager.
I'm rolling the dice then.
Yeah, I mean, it's rock, paper, scissors.
But the employer shouldn't even know that this lady is a single mom.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for them to be talking about that in their interview.
Right. That's what I think too. Like,
Well,
how would
she
you even
wants to
know
bring
that?
it up, yeah.
That's a good point. I
Let
didn't
me
think
put
about
on my resume. I'm a single mom.
Well, yeah, a lot of people try to pull the sympathy card when it comes to stuff like that. And like she said, I mean, we can't help you have a baby. No one was like, have a baby or else.
And a lot of teenagers work to help out, like at home. Like, what teenager decides one day, hey, I'm gonna get a job? No. Your parents tell you, hey, you need to buy your own gas, or you need to buy this, or you need to buy that, and that's why you get a job. You know what I'm saying? So teenagers are helping out too. I don't even know a teenager that works just for the fun of it. Like,
Also, in high school, well, some high schools, I guess, like, there's opportunities for the teenagers. Like, when I was in high school, I was a part of like a college access type program thing, and like they helped me get like a a paid internship at LabCorp. So like that's what I did for my job. So I would still make a minimum wage, but it's like there's opportunities for high schoolers if they really want to look for it. And also they have like classes that they can take where they can go get their CNA license, which I did as well. And you're making more than minimum wage. Not what you should be making, but you're making more than minimum wage. So I can understand why some employers may like say, oh well, this single mom, whatever. But on the other hand, there shouldn't be that discrimination. But if there is,
in my beach town, they don't want to hire teenagers because like they think the older people are going to be more reliable, and there's like a lot of small businesses, and none of the teenagers even go down there because they're all like, well, we have some workers and we don't have the space for you. So we're basically pushed into like restaurants and stuff like that. So a lot of people do discriminate against teenagers.
And the fourth discussion question, it says, is it possible for that a higher minimum wage could ever increase employment? Do you think there are any circumstances that could ever?
That should be a question to economists.
Yeah, like what she was saying, probably there is a way, but it's probably unlikely because the higher up you drive prices, the more businesses have to fork out to their workers, which in turn would cause some businesses to shut down and cause other people, or at the very least cause people to lose their jobs.
If more people put more money into local businesses, because I'm sure everybody's seen that thing about if you spend $100 more in local businesses, the economy would boost other than spending it in like chain stores and stuff. The only downside of that is like small businesses are usually more expensive, so people try to veer away from it.
I don't think you can increase employment based off of like a minimum wage increase because even if they do increase it, it's not even going to be the like, it'll be like $1, $2, maybe $3. But it's not significant, so people aren't going to be like, well, people at McDonald's, they get paid $1 more now. Let's work there. No, it's not going to be like that.
Maybe the question isn't to raise minimum wage, but maybe it's to lower income tax. Because if you're making $7.25, but they're taking $5 of them dollars, like it's not really.
I just had and I lost it. It was a good question too. I'll come back to it.
She's gonna answer. He was raising you.
Oh, yeah. I had something to say and then he started talking and I forgot. It will come to me. It will come to me. Oh, if we raise the minimum wage, I don't think that'll increase like job opportunities because we're already like hurting for jobs. So if we increase the minimum wage, then I don't think it's not going to magically make businesses appear.
Do you think there's a way to like lower the cost of living in order to make the current minimum wage suitable to live off of?
No. Who wants to lose? If you like say lower the cost of living, like maybe, for example, you go into the grocery store and so they lower those prices. Well, if they lower their prices, then they're not going to want to pay as much to the people wherever they're getting this from, and nobody wants to lose money. So lowering the cost of living is not really an option. I wouldn't sell it to them for a lower price just because they want to have a sale or something.
Do you think there'll ever be that balance where like we'll find the perfect level? It's always going to be something we debate over.
So I move that the demand up a little bit, to the right a little bit. You can say that, even we raise the minimum wage, but if we have the demand of labor that's increased, then we may have a lower unemployment. But again, the raising minimum wage is not the cause of that. the cause of that lower unemployment is due to the increase, is due to the growth of the economy. You know, when you have a higher, you know, labor demand, that is indication of the growth of economy. When you have the growth of economy, that can counteract the effect from higher minimum wage. Yeah. I just want to point that out. Okay, alrighty, thank you. Okay, so next week, Tuesday, is Blaine and Sierra, and doing chapter on heating for sale. So it's also supply and demand concept, okay?
Go to Sampson.